Greetings, nerds. This is CNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
I'm doing very well, Sarah. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
That's good. Have a good week.
I plead the fifth on that.
No worries. So we've got a long holiday week coming up, so that will make up for a rough one.
Maybe. Don't know.
Well, cool. Well, hopefully it makes up for it. How's that?
Hopefully.
Well, I know we teased this some for our Arrow fans. Let's talk about this.
You're so cryptic. What is this?
So we were lucky enough to ask
James Bamford,
the producing director for Arrow, to join us, and he said yes. But unfortunately, you couldn't join us, and I really, really am bummed about that. But we hope everyone enjoys it, and hopefully we'll get him back on again sometime soon so Sarah can join in the conversation.
So this is Will and James Bamford.
Greetings, nerds. We are happy to bring you a very special guest this week. We have James Bamford, the producing director of Arrow, joining us to talk about his career and his time on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. James, how are you doing today?
Great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining us and also for following our podcast page. And we really enjoy seeing all your great pictures on Instagram. I know you had a nice vacation trip to Europe during your break, and it looks like you and your family had a great time.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Thank you very much. You have to use your free moments in this life. You have to cherish them. So, work hard, play hard, as it were.
I hear you. Yep, definitely. That's great words to live by, and I know we try to live by that mantra as well. So one of the things we'd like to talk with you about is you've had a very, very interesting career arc from going to a stunt choreographer to now producing director of a major television show. And we just like to, for our listeners who many of them who are familiar with you, but some are not, if you could just sort of introduce yourself to us and, where does your story start and what drew you to doing stunt work and then leaded you to the work you're doing behind the camera now?
I was brought up in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, small town. Long story short, brought up by my mother and father. I was adopted at birth. Interesting occurrence in itself. I was always very grateful for that, and my parents were always, from the very early on, telling me that I was chosen and that sort of thing. So I grew up feeling very confident and strong about choices that I made within the confines of a small town and whatnot. Went through, a lot of athletics programs growing up and landed in martial arts 8 years old. The foundation and platform for me for the rest of my life, essentially self-discipline and hard work. And all of that have sort of spilled over into other aspects of my life stemming from martial arts. I was very fortunate to have been able to attend classes and really push myself from a very early age, and then apply that same formula, if you will, to other aspects of my life, and then eventually into the film industry. When I was a very young boy, my father and I used to watch television a fair amount, and go to films and whatnot, and a lot. I was an only child, so I watched a lot of television.
Right. I was going to ask you, what was your favorite program?
There were a few that we watched quite regularly. One of them being The $6 Million Man.
Oh yeah.
Starring Lee Majors.
Favorite
Charlie's Angels. They were just, the programs that were on at the time, they were just indicative of that period of time in history and, what was going on television. And there was a certain amount of suspension of disbelief that went on in television there. Even as a small child, I could see, mostly everything was filmed in Los Angeles. And you could clearly see, I wondered, strangely enough, I was curious as to why every television show that I viewed, I didn't know why there had to be palm trees seemingly in every city, on every show. So eventually the realization came to me that, pretty much every program on television was filmed in the same city. No matter what, it said that it was Los Angeles. And even an 8-year-old, can figure that one out, after a certain amount of time.
So if the show's being filmed in Southern California, growing up watching Knight Rider, I was wondering why Michael Knight always walked around warm Southern California in a black leather jacket.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Like my question, like I said, when I was at that age was, why were there always palm trees? There's no palm trees where I live. Why are there palm trees? It was interesting. And very early on, I started, with visuals, I started forming sort of, I tried to pick out where something was filmed. And this is, 8 or 9 years old. I was, like I could tell right away if something was shot in New York or Los Angeles, having never been to either one of those cities.
Yeah.
Which is very strange, come to think of it, now. Even if they didn't mention the name of the city, there was sort of a quality of light that you could sort of feel and see within anything that was filmed in either one of those cities. It was really interesting to me, strangely enough, as a child. But the $6 Million Man in particular, the lead character was capable of all these incredible feats of jumping and running. He could run 50 miles an hour. And I would always ask my father, who's not with us any longer, I would always ask my father, how does he do that, Dad? Like, how come, can I run 60 miles an hour? Can I jump over fences that are 20 feet high? And he would say, well, that's not him, son. That's a stuntman.
Okay.
And after that, I started to be really curious as to what's a stuntman. Oh, wow. And then, later on we'd watch movies like Hooper, which revolved around, the whole stunt part of the industry. And then the stuntman became unveiled to me, and sort of the whole stunt industry. And Wonder Woman came on television, which we also watched with Linda Carter. And then I became quite curious as to, she must have a stunt double also, a stunt woman. And, when you're a little kid, you're just learning and you're trying to figure things out. And then I heard about her stunt double, which was, there wasn't social media back then. You had to sort of research things in a different fashion.
I was going to say, a lot of us that read Starlog magazine, that would be the social media of the day.
Exactly. Magazine, 100%. I would search and look for articles on stunt doubles and stunt people. And we'd go, we went to Disneyland on a trip. I think I was, again, 8 years old. Went to Disneyland and, of course, Universal Studios at the time. Mm-hmm. And all I was interested in was the live stunt show. I didn't care about anything. I didn't care about the rides. I didn't get, I wanted the behind the scenes stuff. I wanted to learn. We'd see the live stunt show and, there was stuntmen, stunt women, and, it was just really interesting to me. And I began to start to break it down for myself. Later on, I was a juvenile corrections officer, in Victoria, Canada. Okay. And at the time, I was also teaching karate for my instructor at a karate dojo. But basically, I grew up in a karate club. After the age of 8, I just stayed there and kept training. Eventually, became an instructor, and through one of the stunt people who had become a stunt person later in life, who was a karate student at this same school, contacted my instructor and sort of, said, hey, we're looking for a guy who's about 6 feet tall and 170 pounds and can do tricks and kick cigarettes out of people's mouths of that nature. And, he said, oh, I have a young black belt here that could do that and blah, blah, blah. And so they asked us to put something on tape which was, of course, a VHS tape at the time.
Right.
And we filmed like 3 hours worth of footage of myself performing all these different feats, breaking boards and little fight sequences that I choreographed, and things of this nature. And we edited it down to about 2 minutes long and sent it off to the stunt coordinator on it was for a TV series called Cobra at the time, starring Michael Dudikoff.
Oh, yeah.
Who you may remember as the American Ninja at one time.
Yep, I do.
And it turns out he needed a stunt double, predominantly a martial arts. He needed a martial arts fight double at the time. And long story short, they had me come over to Vancouver and audition for them in person just to make sure I was the person on the videotape and that I could do all the things that were promised. Next thing you know, I was asked if I had a place to stay because I was working tomorrow. So
awesome. That's a great story.
And there you go. And my stunt career started. I was literally thrown into the mix. I was thrown onto set and asked to choreograph the fight on my first day on set. The fight of which my character was the central, combatant.
Okay.
And luckily he had done a lot of, in my karate, we had done a lot of live performances and whatnot for, the local fair and whatnot, on stages. So, that sort of thing was second nature at that point. So, it was fun. What I didn't realize was, at the time, my first day on set, I didn't realize that, I just thought it was me. Okay, it's me now. I'm fighting. So it wasn't made clear to me that I was, yes, I was a stunt double for the lead character, which in this case was Michael Dudikoff. He was a Navy SEAL and all sorts of things. But it wasn't made clear to me that I should be mimicking his, posture and his, the way he walked and all his little idiosyncrasies and whatnot. So I just went into full, Bruce Lee mode, and it was I think it was quite humorous as to the result, because I just started fighting the way I thought. I was a huge Bruce Lee fan also.
Sure.
If you weren't a Bruce Lee fan, I don't know what you were into back then.
It was sort of like it was, either Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris, and then later, I guess in later years, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah,
I just stuck with Bruce. Muhammad Ali was a huge influence and inspiration to me as well, just throughout my life. Both as a boxer, as an athlete, but sort of as a human being as well, and as a political activist.
Right.
Through history, Muhammad Ali had a great effect. Bruce Lee also, outside of his film work, was a great man, a great philosopher, and a martial artist, to his credit, in a real-time martial artist. I never was a Van Damme fan. I was a bit of a Chuck Norris fan, not to, but to a greater extent, Bruce Lee and Ali were my two guys. Later on, my mother worked at a Cablevision company, local Cablevision company, so I had access to foreign films. So I was also a Jackie Chan fan from very early on. Long before he was known to the United States, I was watching Jackie Chan films, his Chinese films that weren't even dubbed at the time. They were in Chinese. So I was watching those films, old kung fu films, and Jet Li, like long before, he was ever popular in the United States. So, and so that part of the film industry and that was fascinating to me.
Yeah. Let me ask you, given that you've mentioned so many famous martial artists, and not only from the film industry like Jackie Chan and Jet Li and Bruce Lee, what in your current And I'll use this to sort of segue as to how you got to Arrow. Did you, in your professional career as a choreographer and stuntman, implement some of their techniques into your choreography when you were, on set and working on different productions?
Of course. Constantly, I would pay homage to moments that I loved from films, Enter the Dragon, Chinese Connection, Big Boss, things like that, Bruce Lee films, Jackie Chan films that I loved. It was difficult in the beginning, though, as they just weren't as accepted in the mainstream film and television here.
Okay.
So I was literally told one of the first fight sequences that I was participating in, I was literally told by one or two of the other, the stunt guys that I was fighting, I was told to slow down and to form at stunt speed. They said the exact quote was, "I need you to fight at stunt speed, not karate speed."
What does that even mean?
I didn't. Well, I found out later that Bruce Lee was actually asked to slow down his movements because the film stock couldn't capture certain movements if he moved too fast. At that time, that wasn't me. I mean, I'm definitely not comparing myself to Bruce Lee because I doubt that I was ever as fast as him. Obviously, when I was a younger man, I had a lot more speed and power and such. But I definitely was never Bruce Lee. But the techniques and the style of the stunt fighting on set back then were different. They were more based on sort of what was done in the cowboy movies. More John Wayne, and so the timing was much more one beat timing. So, one punch, one block, one punch, one fall, and it was 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
And I was, I wasn't taught to fight like that in the martial arts. I was taught to beat your opponent to the punch and and hit them 5 times to their one punch and, hit them 10 times before they hit the floor, sort of thing. It baffled me that somebody was telling me to slow down. It didn't make sense to begin with. And of course, you're the new guy, so you adapt to what's asked of you because you want to fit in and all that sort of thing with the current industry standards and that sort of. And then later, as you start to realize, you see yourself on camera, I'd see myself on camera and think, wow, that looks really slow compared to what I knew I was capable of. I thought that certain things. So I would learn a lot of what not to do, and I just never felt that time in the industry. I never felt that particularly the fight sequences in North America, I never felt that they were being performed up to snuff because again, I was a Hong Kong film fan and I was just used to a different pace and timing. So it took a long time for American cinema to sort of catch up to that style. And now it's obviously it's become popular for years now, since The Matrix and before. But before, they used to use a lot of tricks. Just usually it would be editing to try and help speed up the process. You can see old movies and also they shoot things very close and tight, as in, they've done it now on Bourne Identity, but referencing as far back as, say, Mel Gibson film Lethal Weapon, there's a final fight sequence in the rain out on the front lawn between him and the bad guy. It's shot very tight and you can't see what's going on and, that sort of thing. But that's a technique used because, the actors weren't completely trained. And, you have to sort of do that to hide the fact that their movement isn't, they're not martial artists and they're not Navy SEALs. They're not what have you, whatever the characters are meant to be. And, you want to add energy into the performance with the lens. as well. And, to this day that is used, that particular technique is incorporated from time to time, depending on what the scenario is, and audiences get more and more sophisticated and pick out what you don't want to, but you can pick out a stunt double sometimes if the lighting isn't quite right, or editorially, for instance, you can always see in some of the raw footage, you can always see a stunt double's face here or there,
right,
somewhere. But there's lots of things you can do to protect for that. With the advent of actors more and more are taking the physicality of the jobs more seriously, because of guys like Tom Cruise, who
he's amazing.
He goes out and trains, and exactly. But and then consequently, certain times he gets injured because of it as well.
Right.
You've probably seen the footage where he broke an ankle doing that jump. No matter what, the audience expectations are bigger and bigger throughout the years. People forget that a stunt is a risk performance. There is a risk. People are still, even with visual effect augmentation, people are still risking their lives. The stuntmen and women are still risking their lives and the injury. It is still an industry where the people performing it come to work every day, and there is a 100% injury rate. Everybody gets hurt. It's the degree of the injury or the pain that we want to decrease every year. The safety factor, and everybody, you learn something every year. You learned what they did back in 1972, albeit impactful and painful and, visually appealing, may not be as safe as another technique that we've devised in 2015. Stunt people are always adapting and learning and overcoming new obstacles.
Yeah.
And that's...
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I think folks forget that sometimes in our enjoyment of the stunts, we sometimes forget the dangerous nature of it. Just recently what happened on the Walking Dead set with their stunt person who was killed, I think, performing a stunt, if I recall.
Yeah, there was. There's, you can name several instances on different set. Accidents do happen, and when something happens like that, not only the fans, but the studios, the other stunt people, the actors, the crews, everybody's reminded that this is real. And, there's a lot of people that would come up and say, I want to be a stunt person. And you'd say, okay, well, jump off that loading bay and to your back, land on the cement for me, and now do it 10 times in a row. No, actually 15 times. That's what the stunt person has to do on set every day.
Wow.
That's people don't always realize.
Yeah, it's not necessarily
they only see the finished product. So
right, it's not a one take kind of thing. It really is. It's choreographed just like any other scene that's been shot.
Yeah, it's choreographed. It's rehearsed. It's and you try to, at least on our show on Arrow, we try to keep going until you get it right. Unfortunately, one of the big battles on television, on any television program, not just ours, is time. So our show is very ambitious. On Arrow, the scripts are very large, and the action sequences are very large and detailed, and that takes time to shoot. And we're always fighting the clock, and safety is one of the big issues that has to be maintained at all times. Just sheer volume of, if we tried to count how many punches, for instance, have been thrown since the pilot of Arrow to the premiere of season 701, it's impossible, because it's just, there's been that many that we've lost count. How many fights have there been? How many punches thrown? How many jumps off the rooftop? It's one of those shows. It's one of those rare shows where the level of the action is so high that, and the expectations are higher every season from everyone. We're not on Netflix, although, we are on Netflix later, but we're not the bigger budget Daredevil, which came after us. We're not that. We're the first show of its kind, television-wise, after Smallville's incarnation, for years later, there wasn't anything until Arrow came out, and then it has spawned all these other shows. But we're still operating, basically on the same budget and whatnot, compared to all these other shows. We don't depend, for instance, on visual effects on Arrow as heavily as, say, even Daredevil does, or Flash, Supergirl, any of the shows where their characters are complete metahumans, for instance. Yeah. Our lead character and several of our other characters are, comparable to, say, the Batman of the DC universe, whereas he relies on his skills, intuition, and hard life and experience and training to get through and overcome his opponent. He doesn't have superhuman strength. He doesn't have, all these other things that a metahuman would have. So because of that, we also don't have the budget to support all these other skills. Except, our budget expands slightly when we shoot our crossover episodes because we have no choice because we have these other characters coming to visit the show. We have the Flash, we have Supergirl, we have
Right. And you directed one of the episodes of the crossover this year, correct? The part 2?
Season 5 and season 6, yeah, correct.
The crossovers, I can only imagine how much more complexity that brings to filming. Now, since you're starting season 7, let's give the fans an idea of what's a given day of shooting of Arrow is like, from your perspective, from your days as a stunt coordinator to now as a producer and director.
Completely different. They both, arriving on set is one thing, but it all stems from prep. Mm-hmm. So from the moment you receive the script, and that goes for every department, that goes from the costume department, hair and makeup department, special effects department, art department, construction department, everyone, A to Z, it starts with the script. Usually early conversations with the writers and our showrunners down in LA, sort of what's coming up. We like to have an idea so we can start thinking about coming up with ideas because, again, the schedule is, the time's ticking always, and the clock is against us. So we have to have ideas in the chamber at all times. We have 8 days to prep an episode. Wow. So from the time you get the script, generally, while the other episode is shooting, they're piggybacking each other. So while the other episode is shooting, we are prepping an episode, and we have 8 business days, essentially. So, Monday to Friday, and then 3 more days the next week. And then we're shooting. That's not very much time in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes the episodes are 53 to 60 pages of script, and how many umpteen scenes. And each scene has to be prepped. Each location, has to be prepped. Is it a set or a location? What are they wearing? Is there fight choreography in that? Is there any rigging? What are the actors doing? What about character development? Are there any performance now? That sort of thing. That's from a director's perspective. But each script has all its own qualities that have to be attended to. There's no cookie cutter just going to do this. And, it's not a machine. Each script has to be handled differently. And we have a different director for each script as well. As a stunt coordinator or a fight choreographer, we get the script. We have go through a series of meetings, brainstorming sessions in the stunt department. There's a full stunt team here, which is different than historically the rest of the film industry. Usually you have one stunt coordinator and that's it, and he'll hire people coming in and out. It's becoming more popular now to establish the same model that you do on a feature film, which is you have a team, because just the sheer volume and the quality control level here on the show is very difficult. It would be impossible for one stunt coordinator. So we have a stunt coordinator, a fight choreographer who's also a stunt coordinator, a lead stunt double, and 3 or 4 other supporting stunt utility folks who given various tasks throughout the prep process and on set as well. We have stunt riggers, we have, you name it. So you get the script, you read it, you go through meetings and more meetings, you survey the locations, you go to rehearsals, you choreograph fight sequences, and then 8 days later, you're on set. As a stunt coordinator or the fight choreographer, you arrive there early, you call all your guys and girls, and you ensure everybody's prepared and rehearsed, and when you arrive on set, all that is done. You should be ready when you arrive on set. You know what time. The stunt performers go through hair and makeup. The coordinator goes right to set and should stand right beside the director and be ready. If the director decides to change their mind at the last minute, you have to run away and re-choreograph something at the last minute. Perhaps we try not to do that on this show because that can be both unsafe and also look, unpracticed and unpolished, which we like to avoid as much as possible. And then that's your day. The stunt coordinator, when a stunt is going on or when a fight is going on, basically runs the set as the director would, and they will interface with the director, with the camera department, with everyone on set, with the ADs, and the stunt coordinator or the director is calling the shots, essentially. Which is why historically stunt coordinators do roll into a second unit director quite often position, because essentially they are directing when they're running the set. And during the prep process, we instituted on this show, and it's been going on for years. I used to do it way back on a show called Jeremiah, way back in like the late 90s. We do on this show what's called a previs. We will shoot our fight or stunt rehearsals and then edit it into a sequence, add music, special effects, sound effects and all that, and we present that to the directors and the producers as a full package. Here's your fight, and it's basically a puzzle piece format. Here's this shot fits into this shot. It also goes down to the editors, and hopefully it's followed, that model or that design is followed throughout the process. It takes the guesswork out of it, and that within the prep process. So by the time you get to set, you're not on autopilot because, things come up. It's when humans are involved, it's not a robotic process. By the time you get to set, you should be over-prepared, which is as I said, very difficult on a television series. When I started as a stunt performer, you would be asking the stunt coordinator on the phone when he'd call and hire you, what am I doing? Oh, I'll tell you when you get here. That's what you would, quite often hear. And rehearsal, what's that? Your rehearsal would be when the camera was rolling, Oh, by the way, I need you to throw a fight together. Okay, when are we shooting? Oh, in 10 minutes. And you'd already be there. That's how it was done a lot back in the day. That's how much time and prep and care 30 years ago. That would happen a lot, in my experience. And I'm speaking my experience, what would go on, back then.
Let me ask you this. I wanted to sort of piggyback on a topic we discussed earlier about actors being very more engaged in their own stunts these days. Tell us, I know I'm sure our listeners will want to know, what's it like to work with an actor like Stephen Amell, who's very physical, very kinetic actor, and also some of the other members of the cast who, especially with the new Team Arrow coming on board here in recent years?
Well, Stephen, right off the bat, number one on the call sheet, Stephen Amell comes in with an incredible athletic ability right off the bat. I met him in the pilot and started training him for the pilot, and my process was as such that I would start introducing techniques to him, Filipino martial arts, from Japanese martial arts, and run him through several drills, and then I would observe him. And the choreography for the pilot, I based on his strength. So what he excelled at in training, I would put into the fight sequences in the pilot. And he also came to us well-trained in the parkour world. He was training down in LA before he arrived in Vancouver. So his strengths from parkour were also incorporated, which is great if you can do that. And then Stephen continued to train. When you get into the series process, there isn't as much time. Before the pilot, of course, we have a month leading up to shooting. So, he had a lot of training. And now we have to just rely on his basic training that he had in the pilot to get us through. And, now it's like Stephen will learn pieces of a fight sequence he'll learn just before he goes to camera now, because he's the lead character, so he's in almost every scene. And the stunt guys are over here doing this, he's over here doing that. And he has learned he's also got a very receptive brain. He learns choreography very quickly, and he's very talented in that way that you can show him something once, and he just looks at you and nods and says, "Okay, I got it." And the next thing you know, he's running through it, and he's performed it. He'll do it a couple times, and then we roll the camera and in the final product. And that's coming from before the pilot of Arrow. Stephen had not had any martial arts experience whatsoever.
Wow.
He hadn't thrown a punch previous. David Ramsey, as an opposite example, David had trained for many, many years with different masters in different forms of the martial arts. So David Ramsey came to us as a martial artist, which was great. And he and I have trained in similar styles throughout the years as well. So we speak a lot of the same language technically and whatnot. So, which was really great experience altogether.
Did you find yourself telling him to slow down?
No. I don't do that.
Okay.
I never have. Since I became a fight choreographer and had that experience as a performer, I'm the guy who tells people to speed up.
Okay.
The difference between dance and fight choreography is this. They both are choreographed. Dance sequences, fight choreography on film are both choreographed sequences. The difference is the timing and the speed.
Okay.
Dance, the timing is such, depending on the style or the origin of the dance, the timing is such that you see this technique, you see that technique, and it flows. And it's not different from fight choreography in that way. You want to be able to see the different styles or the influences within the fight choreography, but the timing and the intensity of fight choreography has to have the feeling of that violent nature that you find in a fight. That fight on a street, that fight, in the ring, that fight, but you add style to it and technique that you normally wouldn't find in a real fight. You do your superhero pose here and there, your a little more flashy technique, but we try to, if possible, keep the technique as practical and pragmatic on Arrow as possible. So, but the timing has to be such that it's believable. Hey, what I used to do as a fight choreographer, which I don't as the director any longer because somebody else does that job, but I would put myself within the fight. So I would have, if it's a multiple opponent fight, I would say, okay, come at me. Come at me, bro. And then I would deal with, okay, you throw a punch here. Okay, you throw a punch. You kick me from that angle. And I would wanted to feel what it was like. Okay, 3 guys are coming at me at once. What would I do? You can look at a fight and say, there are fights that are criticized as, too quote unquote dancey, which happens from time to time. And whether it's the way it's shot or the way it's performed or what have you, I try to, as much as possible, avoid that. But sometimes, and with some certain characters, you want that feel. It depends on the character and the nature of the show and what the director wants, and there's all sorts of influences that may dictate which way you want to go with that. But just in general rule is for certain performers, making a T-shirt for me said less dance, more fight. Or stop dancing, start killing, that sort of thing. Because it's a fight. It's a fight. It has to feel like a fight. You have to feel the jeopardy, and you don't. And that's always, I've had actors that I've worked with in the past that come from a dance background, which is fantastic. because they have a great capacity for learning choreography very quickly and keeping their technique solid and that sort of thing. And then I have to go in and sort of break down, what's indicative of a fighter posture-wise, whereas a dancer is very open and in performance. They're showing their body. Their shoulders are back. They stand very tall. Their spine, is straight and erect. Whereas a fighter, your shoulders are rolled forward. Your arms are protecting your torso. Your chin is down, so that you're making less of a target for your opponent. A dancer is making a bigger target, and if you look at a dancer from a fight perspective, generally a dancer is making a bigger target, and they're making themselves more vulnerable to attack, whereas a fighter is trying to make a smaller target. But of course, in film fighting, it's somewhere in between.
Gotcha. So I had another question since we're talking transitions from stunt person to now director. What's exactly the role of a producing director on a show like Arrow?
Essentially is somebody who is the keeper of the one of the things, the visual style and integrity of the show that's been established on the show. So he or her will direct several episodes, between 4 and 5 episodes, depending on how many episodes there are in the season, whether it be 22, 23, or 13. To be effective as a producer, you can't direct too many episodes. There's a sweet spot there, usually 4 to 5. You are given so that you have an effect on the style of the show, but at the same time, you are there to support the other directors that come on. So you are in a supervisory position and the keeper of the visual quality and a problem solver and such for the other oncoming directors. I act as a liaison between Los Angeles, our writer's room, our showrunners, and Vancouver as far as what they want to see visually, if we're developing a new character, if we want to change a current character, that sort of thing, because our writers are home base for that part of the process is in Los Angeles. So there has to be a communication. Also, our post-production, our editing is all done in Los Angeles as well. So there has to be, communication between, Los Angeles and Vancouver. We also have a line producer on the show who is responsible for scheduling, budgeting, all that sort of stuff as well. And we work in conjunction with each other as far as, if there's a budgeting issue, how can we creatively overcome that to still, end up with the same product or the same effect that the script is asking for and the director is asking for. I help support the directors as the producer portion of it. I help support the directors as in, here's our visual style. This is what we did here. Here's a suggestion to shoot this particular scene, come up with things together, while at the same time allowing the directors to, have their own vision, obviously, because that's what they do. And all the while maintaining the integrity, we have to maintain the integrity of the show that's been established, etc. So it's producer-director. The director portion is not only my own episodes that I'm given. Generally, you will be given the effectual episodes, the premiere, in this case, the crossover, the finale, 1 or 2 other episodes within the season, maybe sometimes the mid-season premiere or finale, that sort of thing. And then in between, the other directors have gone, they've done their episode, they've completed their episode, and they've left. Sometimes if our episodes are too ambitious, there's footage that's still required to be shot, and the outgoing director isn't available. They've gone on to another show. That's also added onto my plate. I do the reshoots, the pickup shots, the pieces that never got done because we ran out of time, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And when I'm doing that, I'm still working in conjunction with the other directors. The other directors are communicating with me the whole time on the phone, via email. We're discussing, what their wants and needs are and their vision. And then it's a collaborative process.
Awesome. So so with that as a backdrop, what's been your favorite episode of the show been up to this point?
I've never been that guy. People have asked me, as a stunt performer before, what's been your favorite stunt?
Right.
What's been your favorite stunt you've performed? What's been your favorite stunt? What's your movie? I've never been that black and white. I'm not that guy. I'm not even very early on as a child, somebody said, what's your favorite color? I'm like, I don't know. I like blue. I like red. It depends. I don't know. So I have very many fond memories, from this show, and I have a lot of fond moments, and there's just a very long list. I was asked the other day on Twitter, actually, who my favorite or most inspirational director was, and that list goes on forever. I've got, umpteen directors from different countries, men and women. I've been influenced by so many different, from so many different angles, by so many different people. Myself, as a stunt performer, it's hard for me to sit still. I'm a multitasker, so it comes as a help in this particular job.
Two final questions for you, and I really do appreciate your time and being so open with us on our program. Why do you think the Arrowverse worked so well on the CW?
To begin with, when it first came out, it was new. It was different. It is something that it was something that had never been done on the network, and say Smallville came out and that sort of thing. But we are a 100%, 180-degree difference from Smallville. I can, honestly say that this show, Arrow, had never been done before on television, in this style, this tone. Why does it continue to work? Because it's constantly evolving. It's while at the same time attempting to maintain its core, its soul.
I have one final question, which I think everyone would be mad at me if I did not ask you this, and without betraying any spoilers or anything, can you give us any hints about what we can expect in season 7?
So many things. We have a new showrunner, Beth Schwartz, who's been on the show and involved with the show since the pilot. And she's a very, very talented, fantastic lady who's got a lot of great ideas and for the direction of the show. So I can honestly tell you that season 7 is going to be, albeit some of your favorite qualities of the show, it's going to be a renewed feel and direction to the show, 100%. And I'm very excited and very happy to say that we're all, creatively as an artist and as a director and somebody who's also been involved with the show since the pilot, you're always looking for new avenues to attack your creativity. She's got fantastic ideas in the direction of the show. There's also some new writers in our writers' room coming from different perspectives, different shows, and I think you're going to see a renewed vigor in just the energy. And, well, you'll see. Even in our old characters, you're going to see a different take on them, and while at the same time maintaining some of our favorite qualities that they have. Now, what can I give away as far as spoilers? What I can tell you is this. Ready?
Ready.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Nothing. You get nothing.
Yeah. I had to try.
Sorry, Bob.
That's okay. I totally understand. I know we're all following Twitter and social media very closely to see whatever spoilers we can get, any still shots from Vancouver, etc. But I just, again, want to thank you so much for your time. It's been great chatting with you and learning more about your career and how you got to be where you are today. Follow James on Twitter. He's a great tweeter. Different, just as much energy as Steven without stepping into it like he does sometimes. But really do enjoy all your social media interaction, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir. I can say one thing to the fans out there of our show. All of our fans are very important to us. It doesn't matter what part of the fan base you're from. It doesn't matter which character you support. You're all very important to us. Know that. And if somebody doesn't retweet something or, you don't see something liked or what have you, people are humans, we're not, people have jobs to do too. So, our lives aren't always on Twitter. We're also making the show. So we love all of you that have supported us since day one and come along the way. And I can't say enough great things about our fans. That I've met some wonderful people. I've gone to a convention or two and met some people who I met on Twitter and then later on in real life, and they've turned out to be friends from after that, and we still talk. And there's just some really great people out there, and it's just a wonderful thing to see how passionate our fans are. Now, as far as spoilers go, back in the day when I was a kid, and even not a kid, even now, I don't want to know what's going to happen in an upcoming episode of my favorite shows. Back in the day, I've had several favorite shows throughout the years. I don't want to know. I want to watch the episode to find out. Because watching an episode and already knowing what's going to happen totally ruins it for me.
Exactly.
So, that's why I try not to. I try very hard not to spoil if I can. People ask, and of course I want to make people happy because, everybody wants everyone to be happy. I think it's really important to watch a show with a clean slate and not know what you're getting into. And if there are qualities within an episode that are meant to surprise or shock you or throw you off, and to get the full effect of those story points, you need to go into the episode clean as a fan, and that's what I like to do as a fan anyway.
Yeah, so our host Sarah Belmont, she's exactly that way. She avoids trailers just for that reason.
Yeah, I want to be excited about an upcoming episode or a feature film. I don't want to find out too much about it. I just want to know who's in it. A spoiler to me is, do we have a guest cast coming on to the show who may be interesting to the fan base, like myself. We've seen on another show, perhaps, wow, so-and-so is on the show. Wow, I really liked what they did on this show. I can't wait to see what they do on Arrow. Or I really don't like giving away plot details or story as much as I can help it, just because, I want fans to enjoy watching the show, and that their first look at the show should be with, for lack of a better term, virgin eyes.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Look forward to seeing your work in season 7.
You're welcome, buddy, and thank you. Anyone, you've always been a positive commenter on Twitter and the DMs and all that, and I support anyone who is a good person and kind, and stay that way. The internet's full of people trying to hurt each other's feelings, and there's no need for that.
100% with you. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, sir. You have a great day.
And we're back. Well, I'm back. Will was with you guys the whole entire time.
James was a fun person to talk to, and looking forward to seeing Arrow season 7. I think it's going to be some good stuff.
So Will, say your Twitter handle so they can tweet you or something.
You can find me at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me on Twitter at SJBelmont, SJBELMONT. So please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd, friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on both iTunes and SoundCloud. And you can also find us on the iHeart Radio app and Spotify. Good night. Geek out. You're welcome.